Hello everyone, and I'm Beastly Eel, and in today's video we're going to be talking about the latest episode of The Boys. So in this episode there's a lot of grotesque stuff, so if this is not one of your interests, then I don't know why you clicked on this video to begin with. Because the boys are finally back to the way they were in the earlier seasons, where there's blood, gore, and everything messed up. So we're going to talk about a bunch of different areas to be discussed. The main story is apparently the boys trying to figure out where the virus is that Newman found to try to use it against the Supes to take out Homelander, just in case he goes and starts to try to overthrow the entire world. So their brilliant idea is to go to prison, to go to Stanley Edgar, who is in prison, to convince him to work with them to get the virus so they can then head over, basically so they can figure out a way to find it and use it against the Supes. So he's very much against it. He's like, he's not going to do anything, blah, blah, blah. And that's when Butcher pretty much uses the excuse of, well, you know, how do you feel that your daughter turned your granddaughter into a monster? Basically insinuating that she used V on her daughter. And that's when he decides that, you know what, he's going to join forces with them, because in the end he's looking for custody of the granddaughter. So he decides for it. That being said, he then gets released, where he's put on a, what's it called? Oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank. Ankle bracelet. And he goes to the only location he thinks that there would be the virus. So he goes to this cottage that has a massive amount of land. They go into the basement and they see that the virus is gone. There's no trace of it. And there's blood pretty much everywhere. They begin to go outside, look throughout the fields and everything else. Actually, I'm sorry, before that, they're actually stopped by Newman and her people, who they start to have this little bit of a standoff between the two of them and everything else, to really kind of go back and forth between them all. Eventually, they agree that they need to work together to figure out what's going on. They go out into the world. They go into the chicken coop, where the chickens are apparently infused with V, and they begin to rip through people with ease. However, that's not the only souped-up animal out there. Apparently, there are a bunch of sheep that are flying around eating people. So they eventually go into one of the barns, lock themselves in, and they find Samir, who is apparently the daughter of Newman's child, but also the head scientist. So during all of this, apparently he only has one more vial of the virus, and they're talking about how they're going to use it. Butcher would rather keep it because it's the only one left, and that they would deal with the sheep them in a different way. However, the rest of the group is like, no, we need to inject it into the dead guard, throw them outside, have the sheep eat it, and then they'll die of the virus. They finally get outvoted. They do it. The sheep eat it. They open the side door. They begin to run because they're being chased by the sheep. The last guard is eaten, and that's when the sheep begin to get sick and begin to collapse and die. During all this, they tried to look for Samir, who could not be found. The only thing that was found was a leg of his. And at the end of this episode, we got to see Samir without his leg. Apparently, Butcher cut it off and locked him up in the barn to try to make him use his brain to create another batch of the virus. And, of course, that's what his plan was to begin with. Now, however, we see his partner there that we've seen multiple times. However, this is the first time we see Butcher and his partner talking in front of other people and interacting with other people. And Samir seems to be very confused at who Butcher is talking with, which alludes to the fact that Butcher is hallucinating not only just his wife, but that guy as well, and that Butcher is apparently very much losing his mind. So that is one piece. So then we have the Supes version of things, basically Vought, where they're trying to figure out who is the leak and everything else, and they have basically made a huge dig at Disney with their Vought universe and all their different phases, that they have everything planned from from phase 7 all the way to phase 36 or something like that. And they had this big screen with all the different shows and movies that were coming out for each phase, which obviously was a huge dig at the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So anyway, we have, apparently Ryan was supposed to have his own show with as a teenager and everything else, and Ryan's not a big fan of it, and so the Homelander is basically trying to explain to Ryan now that he doesn't really care what he does as long as he's happy. He's not gonna. I don't want to phrase this. He still wants him to do something meaningful because he's a God's child, but at the same time, he's not really all that much caring about like all the other stuff because he's realizing now that he's been manipulated his whole life, and he doesn't want Ryan to be manipulated as well. However, there's still some hints of him manipulating Ryan. However, I don't think he's doing it intentionally anymore. I think it's just something he's naturally done his whole life, and so it's very difficult for him to break out of it. I guess the best way to kind of describe that. So anyway, he convinces the director that he doesn't want his own show or anything else, and then Ryan basically explains that he wants to be a hero, like actually help people the right way. So I'm like, fine, whatever. I go, fine, you see the woman over there. So apparently the head director of this whole thing has been sexually harassing his intern, his female intern. So Ryan goes over and is basically like, hey, like, is this guy bothering you? And she's like, yeah. And so he goes, all right, now apologize to her. So he does it, and he doesn't feel like it's sufficient enough. So he basically tells him to go on his knees and beg for forgiveness. He does it again. He still doesn't believe him. So he tells the woman to slap him, and she beats him up big time. Because Ryan's now getting a kick out of all of this. We now also have a scene with Ashley and the news reporter where he's breaking up with her because she's not the actual CEO anymore, and that it's not as kinky anymore because he's no longer he's looking for somebody who actually has power over him and not somebody who pretends to have power over him. So obviously Ashley's not happy with that. So her and A-Train are talking, and he basically explains that he's been the leak the whole time and that he and her need to work together or else they're both going to be in trouble. And Ashley's kind of like, whoa, this is not what I signed up for. However, they decide to I'm assuming they either switch phones or finagle stuff where they switch the news reporter's phone with A-Train's, and apparently they realized he was the one contacting MM, and that Homelander was basically calling all the 7, along with Sam and Kate from Gen V, to beat the news reporter to prove that they are wrathful gods and should be basically worshipped. So they begin to beat the guy up until he's dead. Well, we're assuming he's dead, mostly because of the crunching. Definitely because of the crunching. And that was the end of that piece of the episode. So the final piece was the one with Huey and his father and his mother. So Huey and his mother get into a little bit of an argument over why she used the V on him, and she was like, well, I thought, it'd be great to have your dad back. Well, as time goes on, Huey's dad is starting to have memory issues, and eventually disappears and kills a guy. Apparently is holding a patient's heart in his hand. He starts freaking out, then it starts phasing through stuff, because apparently that's his super ability. So then he starts to have memory issues because he's only remembering of the past, specifically right before or right after Huey's mom left. So he's then really mad at Huey's mom, who then he tries to kill. There's a lot of back and forth. There's a very disgusting scene where he phases into a guy in a hospital bed, and he also super strong, so he rips through everything, and really makes things messy, because then when he phases out, the guy's entrails fall to the ground. So it's just a mess in general. So finally, Huey and his mom are hiding from this guy, from Huey's dad. Huey's dad finally finds them. He's going to kill the mother, and that's when Huey jumps in and is basically explaining everything to his dad about what's going on, what has happened in the past, and which is technically what his dad thinks is the future now, just because his dad was losing his memory. He then explains that everything's going to be alright and he's going to take care of it, and that's when Huey has to put his dad down. He concocts a massive amount of drugs to put in his dad's system to kill him, and does so. And it was a very sad moment, but it was something that we showed the massive growth that Huey's had in this short series. Because Huey in his entire life has been the same person. He's done the same thing over and over again, never changed. However, ever since the boys got involved and A-Train killed his girlfriend, that's when things actually started to change in his life. And as weird as it sounds, for the better. In the sense of it made him more assertive, more confident, and being able to deal with stressful situations that most people can't handle in regular terms. However, obviously tragedy is horrible no matter what, and the loss of his girlfriend was definitely a major tragedy for him. However, he didn't let it knock him down forever. He built himself back up better than he ever was. And I think that's what makes him incredible. And in this scene really shows it, where he's willing to accept his dad's death, which is something I feel like he was not ready for at all. And that was the end of the episode. So I'm very curious at what we're going to be getting. I'm hoping we're definitely going to be getting what's inside Butcher's brain, specifically what's been going on and everything else, to have a better idea of where his mental state is. But also, I think that his V injection that he gave himself went to his cancer, which is causing new abilities that are very different than the ones he got when he was healthy. So I'm very curious on that. But let me know what you guys thought about this episode down in the comments below. Did you like it? Did you not? And why? And as always, if you like the content you see, please make sure to like and subscribe down below. Other than that, this is going to be Beastly Eel signing out. Have a great night.